Mike Smith getting all from West Coast as he clings to the lead from Gunnamera. IRAP is third at the inside. Cameron is fourth and is West Coast, and he keeps on rolling. And West Coast goes wire to wire in the Travers.
Live from the backstretch at historic Saratoga Racecourse, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow. Racing Across America is brought to you by Pinnell's Restaurant, a Saratoga tradition since 1922. 284 Jefferson Street, Saratoga, just minutes from the track. Thoroughfan, giving the fan a voice. Find them at thoroughfan.com. And Woodbine Racetrack. Pick, bet, and cheer on world-class horse racing north of the border.
Good morning and welcome to the Friday edition of Racing Across America. I'm Seth Merrill. Thanks for joining us. Beautiful morning here at Saratoga. If you're planning to come up to the track, you're going to have a great afternoon. The sun is out, the humidity has kind of broken, and I think it's going to be a great day here. So by all means, if you have plans, come on up to the track. Today's show, towards the end of the program, we'll be joined by our friend Jeremiah Engelhart. He's got a couple of horses tomorrow, including one in the stakes race, the Adirondacks. So we'll hit on those. We'll get an update on some of his winners from earlier in the meet and where they might be headed, and a couple of runners today as well. So we'll talk about that and much more with Jeremiah Engelhart. Shona Rosenblum from the Breeders' Cup social media team will join us a little bit later, talking about social media and how that's playing into the promotion of the Breeders' Cup this year and every year, as social media has kind of become a real player in the horse racing game, hopefully bringing some new people in. Again, we'll talk about that. And we're going to take a quick break in just a second, but when we come back from the break, Alex Waldrop, President and CEO of the National Thoroughbred Racing Association, will join us. They had a nice little conclave over at the Fasig-Tipton Pavilion last night, talking about a lot of racing issues. We'll hit on those this morning as well. All of that after we take this first break and come back on this Friday edition of Racing Across America. Stay tuned.
Birdstone is an outside front. They're coming down to the finish. Can Smarty Jones hold on? Here comes Birdstone. Birdstone surges past. Birdstone wins the Belmont Stakes.
You know, and make better decisions, better choices, to know how to connect the dots. In horse racing, knowledge is a powerful tool, but not the only tool. Race results and replays, past performances and live streaming, wagering from all your digital devices. These too are important tools, and you'll find them all right here at Capital OTB. Capital OTB. Become a better horse player.
The backstretch workers are the heart and soul of what we do.
They're the backbone of the industry.
People on the racetrack are very giving people.
It's a very oppressive community of people helping one another. We see it all the time.
Any help we need it. It's right there in their hands.
It makes so much easier in the family to have somebody like Nathan to help them.
Looking for a fantastic meal? Stop by Malcolm's, a unique farm-to-table restaurant experience. Located at 617 Union Street in Schenectady, Malcolm's offers locally grown fresh foods, mouth-watering flavors, an enhanced drink menu, and terrific service. Malcolm's is a sure bet during Saratoga season. Make your reservation today.
Welcome back to Racing Across America, Friday morning here at Saratoga, live from the backstretch as promised before the break. Joined now by Alex Waldrop, President and CEO of the National Thoroughbred Racing Association. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Happy to talk to you a little bit about some of the racing issues. And I know last night you had the nice event over at the Facing Tipton Pavilion talking about some racing issues. We'll get into those in a moment. But for folks who aren't familiar, just give us the NTRA mission.
Well, the NTRA was created 20 years ago now to improve the economics of horse racing. That's it in a nutshell. So we do things like legislative work in Washington, D.C. primarily. We also have a group purchasing program, NTRA Advantage. We have the Safety and Integrity program called the NTRA Safety and Integrity Alliance. We also have the NTRA Communications that helps bring mainstream media attention to our sport and to the business. So we spend a lot of time traveling around the country, supporting racetracks, supporting the horsemen wherever we can. And I'd say that right now, coming off of the legislative sessions we've had in the last 6 months, we're feeling pretty good about the industry. We see handle is up. We see what a strong sale we had earlier this week at Facing Tipton. So things are looking very good.
Yeah, certainly there is a lot of good news in the sport. As it typically tied in with Saratoga, it's always fun to be up here. Again, the sale was such a booming success. We're looking for another big success on the weekend with the New York Breds. We talked with Jeff Canizzo yesterday. I know they're looking forward to the weekend with the New York Breds and the results of the Whitney. So a lot of good news here at Saratoga and racing in general. And part of the good news, before we get to some of the things you talked about last night, and this was one of the topics, but I want to make this first and foremost because as a player, I applaud you, and I want to go back to some of the work you guys did with the NTRA and the withholding rules that were just, as far as horse racing, were a complete anachronism. The wagering withholding rules for horse racing as compared to other types of wagering in the 21st century. And again, as a horse player, you guys did a great job in getting those rules changed by the IRS.
Well, I appreciate that. That was, in some ways, it was a 10-year effort. We got smart about things, and we went, instead of trying to get Congress, convince them to do it, we used the Treasury Department. We did a regulatory approach, and that ended up being the key to unlock this vexing problem. So we're glad to see. In fact, it has actually been more successful than we ever imagined. We expected to see about an 80% decline in the number of W2Gs that are filed, and actually most tracks are at about 90 to 95%, and some online ADWs are seeing 98, 99% declines.
And what people don't realize is the old rules, you had that, you have to go to the IRS window, or these days with the ADW, things would be subtracted, but now that goes back into the pockets of people, which just helps the industry by boosting the churn.
Yes, that's right. And that's exactly certainly that's what we think is the science of it. Now, how much of that has occurred, it's hard to tell. We do see handle looks like it's on its way to be above $11 billion this year for the first time since 2010. There are other factors. We have a strong economy, that's no question. But we have to think that some of that money is coming from people who are, say, rebetting.
Yeah,
so we'll see.
Again, as a bettor, I appreciate the effort, and I know that was kind of industry and player-wide when that was announced earlier this year. Another thing I want to touch on before we get to last night's event, and something that is part of your purview and what you folks do at the NTRA, and we have a couple of contests today here at Saratoga today and tomorrow, but the NHC, want to talk a little bit about that and the NHC Tour and how big that's become and pulling in new players potentially. And every year, I sit in here Sunday morning with Steve Bick. He and I co-host on Sunday mornings. I'm on his radio show during the week, but he goes to Vegas every year, and I love tuning in the radio show to listen to him. You think, hey, horse racing handicapping tournament on the radio, how exciting could that be? But it is infectious, that Vegas tournament, and how much fun that is, and the camaraderie, and that's what you like to see. And I think from listening to other people who have been on Big's show, I think that has helped pull people like Jonathan Kinchin, I think, has said part of that is what pulled him into the game.
Right. It's the social aspects that no question. The contests create friendships. Now they're competitive, but they're also very friendly toward one another. We started the NHC almost 20 years ago. One of the first things the NTRA did on this marketing program was to create the handicapping championship. We initially created it would be the champion for purposes of giving him an Eclipse Award every year. That was its initial. We wanted to crown one champion horse player every year. And that was Steve Christ's idea. That was really his dream. So we created the championship. We seeded it with about $200,000 to get it going. This year we'll be over $3 million in prizes, in cash. Not all of that for the winner, of course. We'll probably have between 600 and 700 competitors. They'll come to DC, they'll come to Vegas. I go to DC. The players go to Vegas. They come to Las Vegas, and for 3 days they go head to head. We end up at the final table with 10 contestants on Sunday, and it's a wonderful afternoon to watch these guys, men and women. We had 2 women who made the top 5 this year, which is against what everyone would assume.
Oh, sure.
So that's great to see women involved. It really engages women on the wagering side, which is, we need to see more of that. So yeah, it's been a great opportunity for us, and for horse players, we think, to make some money, to learn about the sport. It's an easy way. The only question we're having now is it's getting so competitive that we're now offering tournaments to people. We've created essentially a handicapping system, and if you don't want to play against a guy with a scratch handicap,
oh, sure.
If you want to play against a guy with a 5 or 10, I'm using the golf analogy, you can do that. Now me, I need somebody 26, 30. I need a high handicapper. I need a high number because I need low competition. But that gives people a chance to find their niche and compete against people at their level, and hopefully win a spot. And you can imagine 20% every year are people who are brand new to the tournament. So people get, I wouldn't say lucky, they're just really good, and they discover that they have the skill for horse playing when they do a contest.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't get enough time to play in the contest, but I tout them. They do the low roller here every Sunday and Monday here at Saratoga, and I always tout because you have to think a little bit differently. I think they're a lot of fun. As I say, listening to the Big Show, it's infectious, the camaraderie and the fun that they have out in Vegas, and I think that's a great idea to have the contest parsed out to kind of the talent level and pull people in, because certainly it has become very popular, that contest playing over the past 10 years or so, and that part of that obviously with the NHC.
One more thing about that contest. I wish that we could bring people and put them in a stadium and let them watch what occurs on that final day when people come and they're watching races and they're screaming and yelling. We've got huge boards around the ballroom where you can see racing. It starts in the east, it moves west. You get a sense of the scope of the business, the size of it, the love that people have, the passion they have for the business. It's really, I do it every year just because it reminds me why I'm in this business, because these are really passionate people who love what they're doing.
And you mentioned the women, but we've had sitting here with us, and we're going to have them again this Sunday, Duke and Paul Matisse, and you mentioned the women, and it breaks all the stereotypes of the game. These people are all sharp, and they're totally into.
They're not degenerates. No, this is not degenerate.
It's a lot of fun to watch and see the mix of people, and as they say, how keyed in they are and how sharp they are about the game. All right, let's talk a little bit about the event last night. Again, it was down the road a couple of blocks from the track at the Fasig-Tipton Pavilion. Well attended?
Yes, we had a good crowd. About 50 folks who were very interested specifically in legislative matters.
And that's what you talked about, and we've already talked about the IRS withholding rules, but there are some other tax reforms that are coming up.
There was. Well, we spent a minute or two explaining to folks how we operate the NTRA legislative campaign. We actually have 2 campaigns. We have a political action committee, which raises money specifically for contributions. And then we have a legislative action campaign that raises money for lobbying and other educational initiatives. You have to keep the 2 separate legally, but you have to have both to have an effective strategy in Washington, D.C. You can't be, if you don't have a PAC, you're not going to have an effective strategy when you go to Washington. We've had a PAC now for 15 years. Bill Farish is the chair of that PAC. He raises the lion's share of the money for that PAC. We have folks from all over the industry, all over the country, who contribute money, personal dollars. It can't be corporate money. It has to be personal dollars. It goes into that. We raise about $300,000 a year. We give it away. We contribute it to key campaign, to members of Congress. Bipartisan. We do not distinguish. We look for people who support horse racing. They're from horse racing industries, states. Then we have the action campaign, and with that money, that's general dollars that we can raise that from a variety of sources. And we do that primarily through our quarter-point check-off for horse sales. That money goes for lobbying, for groups to go, the Alpine Group, in this case Greg Means is who our chief lobbyist. He uses use that money to pay him to be there in every day. And he has been working closely on tax reform. That was one of the big issues. After we got through the withholding and reporting issue, we focused on tax reform because we knew that Congress wanted to get something done by the end of the year. We wanted to make sure that there was something in that package that worked for horse racing. And we did. We got 100% bonus depreciation, which means that you buy a horse, you buy a yearling, you buy a broodmare, you put that horse into service, you're going to be able to depreciate, expense the entire cost of that horse in the first year. And that's very, if you're in the active trader business, and that's very enticing to owners, new owners especially. There's thing we need in this game, it's new owners. I mean, people say we have a horse shortage, but what we really have is an owner shortage. And things like 100% bonus depreciation, that helps. That gets owners interested, and they realize, hey, the tax rules are going my way. There's also a Section 179 expense allowance. That's a little more complicated. It's there. It's probably used a lot less because the bonus depreciation is so helpful. Another issue that just came out was we just got new rules on the 20% deduction for pass-through entities. So if owners own through a sole proprietorship or they have an LLC or partnership, and if they structure it properly, they can get effectively a 21% tax rate, just like corporations who got a big tax cut in the bill. Now pass-through entities can get the same low tax treatment. So we're working with owners. Structure your entity, structure your partnerships in a way you can take advantage of this 20% deduction on the income that you earn. So it's a great advantage. We're touting that as much as we can. See your tax advisor. I'm not a tax lawyer. I can't tell you exactly how it works, but I can tell you it's very advantageous. And the rules they drafted are very broad. We were hoping they would be so, and they are. It may include many like veterinarians and others in this business who initially were cut out of it, but this is good. Last but not least, three-year depreciation, which we've worked on for the last 10 years. Really, sounds like a very inane topic. Trust me, your tax attorneys, your tax lawyers, your tax advisors want 3-year depreciation because many times that's the economic life of a horse. You want to be able to depreciate over 3 years. That's the way your income comes in. We're working on that. It wasn't in the Tax Reform Act. We're trying to get it through a variety of means. If there's a tax bill that goes to by the end of the year, we'll get it in there. It may be retroactive to the first of the year, but we're trying to get that back. So that's one of the big issues that we talked about in tax reform.
Yeah, as a small business owner myself with the Equidaily website, I know some of this may sound arcane to people who aren't business owners, but believe me, it is very important.
It makes a difference.
And as you said, and as guests here say almost every day at some point, we're trying to pull new owners into the game. And so if you can get these tax rules that make it beneficial to them and maybe make people find the sport a little more attractive, that is very important. But again, with the withholding rule change, you played into the bettors, and I see one of the topics you talked about last night is also something that's been important and plaguing bettors a little bit, the ADW credit card denials and the credit card companies. I guess you're trying to change some thought processes there.
Right. The ADWs came to us, a group of them, and said we're having trouble with some of the major banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, which is the biggest single card that's out there. They were denying our players who tried to fund their accounts with a credit card. So we used an important ally on Capitol Hill, Andy Barr, who is a congressman from Central Kentucky, who is also on the House Banking and Financial Services Committee. He helped us communicate with key people on Capitol Hill, including in this case, Jamie Dimon himself at Chase Bank. And we convinced Chase now to allow their card to be used in funding an ADW account. The reasons that they won't do that are complex. They have to do with something called the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act that was passed about 12, 14 years ago, helping them understand how that law does not impact us, it doesn't relate to us, but many think it does. So education is a big part of this. We've got Chase's in the fold. Bank of America, we're hoping is not far behind. Wells Fargo's got other issues right now. I'm not holding my breath on Wells Fargo. Capital One is another card that we're working on. We can get those 5. That's about 80% of the credit card market. That'll be helpful. But Chase is a big chunk of that. So that's a good win. We're going to continue to push on that.
Very good. Also another topic that has been in the news for a month and a half or so, and certainly the racing industry is looking with some optimism, sports betting.
Yes. Well, We don't have a lot to do. The NDRA doesn't typically go into the states. We don't lobby at the state level because we find those are more complicated. We have members that are on both sides. They're perhaps negotiating on points, and so we don't really get involved at the state level. But we are focused on sports betting at the federal level, and there's a lot of interest in something at the federal level. There are still questions about the scope of, especially online mobile betting, whether that can be conducted intra-state, which is within the state. There's also going to be interest in doing sports betting multi-state, or if not betting itself, at least using some of the infrastructure on a multi-state basis. So there may be a move on the sports betting side to pass a bill somewhat like what we have, which is the Interstate Horse Racing Act, which facilitates interstate wagering on horse racing. We'll be watching that bill if and when it happens, make sure that racing is not in any way impacted. In fact, there's some things that we can do that would help horse racing. So we're watching out for what's going to happen at the federal level. Nothing's going to happen this year. Frankly, with the midterm elections on the horizon, we don't see any major legislation passing. Maybe they'll pass a budget, maybe not, maybe they won't. We'll see. Beyond that, we don't see anything happening. But next year, they'll be back, and we do see the leagues coming to try to make some headway on these issues. We see some of the major sports betting companies, William Hill and others, being interested in some kind of federal legislation. So we'll be there, we'll be monitoring it, determining what's best for horse racing, just like tracks and horsemen do in their states, and we'll look after the industry's interest.
Yeah, clearly we want somebody in there.
Yeah.
If the big entities in sports betting are getting in and looking at legislation, we want horse racing to be in the mix. Absolutely. And have our in those conversations. Also
Absolutely.
Want to talk a little bit about one of the topics you hit on last night, and I know is an important topic here in New York, is immigration reform.
Yeah, so the horse industry, unfortunately, backstretch workers are categorized as non-agriculture foreign workers. If they are foreign workers, they're categorized as non-skilled, non-ag workers, which means they fall under the H-2B program. H-2B visas are capped at $66,000 a year, $33,000 every 6 months. That's a woefully inadequate number. There are many industries that use H-2B, the hotel industry, any seasonal business, fishing, landscaping. There are literally hundreds of thousands of jobs that are filled by H-2B workers, but there are only 66,000 of these visas. We get caught up in that because we have to compete against a big group of folks. We're trying to raise that cap. We're trying to do anything we can. There's a move to get something, there's a returning worker exemption that we're trying to get as part of the appropriations bill that may be passed by the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30 of this year. That's a long shot. That doesn't do much, but it helps. I can't stress enough how difficult an environment it is in Washington, D.C. for anything related to immigration. And even though H-2B visas are not an immigration visa, they are a guest worker visa. You can only stay 10 months. You have to go back to your home country. It still is treated as part of the overall immigration debate, and it's very hard to make progress. One of the things we'd love to do is see backstretch workers categorized as agriculture workers. That would help on a number of fronts. That would give them access to what's called the H-2A visa, which is much more, it's not capped, it's not easy to get, but it's more readily available. And that visa also would perhaps give rise to some different wage and hour rules that would be more preferable to trainers and to workers for that matter. And there's even a bill in Congress to create a new category, an H-2C worker, which would be a wonderful guest worker program, but that has been stymied by a lot of focus on the wall, on the DACA, the Deferred Action Plan for young people who came here for no fault of their own. The DACA program, the impasse between the administration and Congress, and in Congress it's not divided. This is not just blue and red. There are divisions within the Republican Party on how to treat immigration. So it's a very complex issue. It's a mess, and for now, H-2B visas are the future for us. It's not a good one, but we're working to change that if we can. It's just a tough environment.
Yeah, again, though, another issue that seems like for folks who are kind of standing and looking may not be horse racing related, but it's good that we have the people in Washington who are kind of paying attention to those things. And Alex, before we let you go, I know you also talked a little bit about national economic impact studies, and I had Jeff Canizzo in here yesterday from the New York Thoroughbred Breeders, and we were talking about the economic impact of racing and the horse industry in general in New York. He said contributed to New York alone $5.2 billion.
Right.
And I said people drive by a racetrack and they don't look at it maybe as a normal company like a shoe factory. You say, oh, there's that many workers. Well, it is an industry like that because, yeah, there are the trainers and the jockeys, but there's also the concession people and the ticket takers and whatnot. And then you move away and you have the farms and there's the hay and the vets. And it's clearly an industry that when you go just beyond the racetrack, a lot of people employed and a lot of money involved.
The racetrack is the tip of the iceberg. Really have to think about it that way. As you say, so many jobs, very labor-intensive industry, extremely labor-intensive. And that's wonderful from an economic perspective. Of course, this means we have to deal with lots of issues because there's so many people involved. The economic impact study that was we were part of as the entire equine industry, quarter horses, show horses, sport horses, we all came together under the umbrella of the American Horse Council, and we performed a nationwide study on the economic impact of equines. And that number is $122 billion. It is a massive industry. And I can tell you we do that for a number of reasons, not just to talk about it on shows like this, but also to talk to lawmakers at the federal and the state level. And I'm glad Jeff is using those numbers because as part of that study, we did a breakout of New York, we did a breakout of Florida, California, Kentucky, a few key states. And so we have specific numbers on those states. And then we have the national number. And horse racing, of that $122 billion, horse racing makes up about a third of that. So it's about $40 billion, $40 to $45 billion economic impact. And you say that to a lawmaker, you say that to someone in Congress, and they have to stand up and take notice. It's not a niche, it's not a small little industry in one or two little states. It's a big business, and it extends over 32 states, 33 states, depending on which track is open or not. It's hard to keep track of it all sometimes. But it's a massive industry, huge economic impact, and it's so important when we go to Congress, when we go to the state houses, to have that information so that we can get their attention. And so it's a wonderful number. It's bigger, frankly, than we all thought it was because we know that there's been a decline in horses across the country, but the economic impact is still there.
All right, Alex, appreciate the visit this morning, certainly, and we applaud you again for the good work that the National Thoroughbred Racing Association does. You can swing by their website, NTRA, and check out the news on an ongoing basis. As we also didn't mention, have the weekly poll. People can check that out as well. I like that. Kind of keeps you engaged in the game and see how horses are doing in the poll, and you can watch them when they come out on the racetrack and root for or against, as it were. But again, applaud the work you guys are doing on the national level, and continued good luck.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Alex
it.
Waldrop from the NTRA. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little Breeders' Cup and social media. A little bit later on, Jeremiah Engelhart. Stay tuned.
For 4 generations, Bruce Cerrone and his family have continued the 96-year tradition of delighting their local following and faithful summer crowd with the finest authentic Italian recipes. Classic Italian dishes made with the freshest ingredients and served in a home-like setting where everyone is welcome. Some things have changed in the last 96 years, but not Pinnell's commitment to the finest in Italian cuisine. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga tradition since 1922. 284 Jefferson Street, just minutes from the track.
Sign up today for Capital OTB's handicapping series and plan your trip to Las Vegas.
Visit Rivers Casino and Resort, the Capital Region's only destination for live table game action and the hottest new slots paying out millions. And they're off. Horse betting is now at Rivers Casino and Resort with Capital off-track betting terminals and live tellers located just off the gaming floor at Van Slyck's. Get in on all the action at Rivers Casino and Resort.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on a Friday morning. As promised before the break, we're joined now by Shona Rosenblum. She does social media for the Breeders' Cup as part of her own company, Grand Slam Social. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. You and I were talking during the break a little bit about Grand Slam Social. Just before we get into Breeders' Cup specifically, just give us the overview of the company.
Yeah, so Grand Slam is a boutique social media agency, and we focus on providing services for horse-related events, businesses, brands. So if you have a product or an event that's related to the horse community, we really understand that demographic and can relate to them on a social media standpoint. So we're a good resource for that.
And I pulled up the website and I saw you and your two partners pictured. And given that you are focused on the horse racing game, I assume you're a horse racing fan. How did you become a horse racing fan?
So I actually grew up, I started riding when I was 5 years old. So I've been a horse fan forever. And I rode in the show jumping circuit, did hunter jumpers my entire life. And then after college, I started interning at CTP Boston, which is the ad agency that does all of the Breeders' Cup's advertising. So I was introduced to the Breeders' Cup through them and got like immediately into the behind the scenes, like straight to the top of horse racing. And I was just completely enamored with it and fell in love with the sport.
Went to the Breeders' Cup Twitter feed yesterday, and I think the guys will pull up a couple of tweets I pulled up. And you guys, social media for the Breeders' Cup. Breeders' Cup is an event. I mean, there's a couple of days at the end of the year, but obviously there are, what would you call them, sub-events, the win and you're in races that happen all year long. And again, there are tweets going out. What is your game plan doing social media for the Breeders' Cup as we move along? Is it brand awareness, event promo, engaging fans, or a little bit of all of that?
It's definitely a multifaceted strategy because it's sometimes difficult to juggle all of the different audience types that we have with the Breeders' Cup. So you have, you know, those folks that are interested in the fashion and the lifestyle angle. You have the horse fans who just generally love all things horses. Then you have the core horse racing community that really, you need to make sure that you're getting them previews and recaps and the information that they need to properly assess the race. And then you have, you know, working with the marketing team on the ticket sales, and there's Breeders' Cup merchandise. So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Breeders' Cup. I think the way that we approach it from a social standpoint is we try to share everything that we can on social and position in a way that if you want to learn more about that particular stream of information, here's where you go. So we work really closely with their digital team and their web team so that there's landing pages, there's funnels that drive you further down that information stream so you can get to where you want to be. So you're never going to find everything that you need on social media because there's no room in a tweet or a Facebook post to really provide all the information. But what we try to do is capture the attention of those audiences and say, hey, if this interests you, here's where you can go to learn more.
Again, we saw a couple of tweets, but what is the extent of Breeders' Cup social media? I mean, is it Twitter and Instagram and Facebook? And talk a little bit about that.
So we are on all platforms right now. We have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Instagram Stories is now kind of its own medium, and YouTube, and those are the primary channels that we focus on. But Twitter for the horse racing community is a very important channel, and everybody is on it, and it's unique. In some other businesses, maybe Twitter's not as relevant, but in horse racing, it's very relevant. So if you were to choose one platform and you're in the horse industry or the racing industry, Twitter is probably the one you want to be on.
That's interesting. I was going to ask you that. You pretty much answered the question, but I'll ask anyway and see if you can reiterate, because to me, I'm not a big social media guy to begin with, I admit, and I am aiming to jump on Twitter. It's been like the running joke, but I actually did get signed up the other night.
All right, welcome.
But immediately my account was locked, so I hadn't done a thing, and I got the message I'm locked. How did that happen? But I fixed that. So on the weekend we'll jump in a little bit.
Right.
But it does seem to me like Twitter is the social media platform that has played into racing, and maybe logically so, because you can list scratches. You can do kind of up-to-date things that I think play into the racing game.
Yeah, sports in general, it works really well with Twitter because there's so much real-time information, and the way that the algorithms work with social media, you could post a Facebook post or an Instagram post, and that could show up in somebody's feed 2 days later. So if you're posting scratches and it shows up 2 days later, that's not the right place for that piece of information. But on Twitter, it's much more real time and much faster. So it's also one of the more time-consuming channels to nurture and to do well. So it can be a little bit daunting to really plan out that Twitter strategy for yourself. But the key to it all is just planning. So you want to make sure that you have a couple pieces of content a day. It doesn't have to be crazy. You're planning out, your week. You can assume what the trending hashtags are going to be each week because they return all the time. And then just jumping in on current conversations and being careful and PC and everything about what you say.
Clearly, social media plays into a younger audience. Racing is always going for a younger audience. Do you see social media helping to develop those new fans and bring in a younger crowd?
It's funny when people say that, racing needs younger audiences and we need to appeal to this younger demographic. When I go to the racetrack, I see a ton of young people. Yeah. So I know that the fans are there. I think maybe cultivating this sort of, I guess, their journey to maybe becoming more connected, maybe becoming owners, or as they grow into having a little bit more disposable income, can we get those people to buy into a horse? So I think definitely more younger owners are needed and breeders and people in that space. But I see a ton of young people on the track.
Right. Sure.
So social plays really well to that group, to the fan base. So we have got a great engaged community on all platforms.
Talk to us a little bit about the Breeders' Cup Challenge race days. I know certainly the social media plays into promoting those days and getting people out and being aware of when you're in races and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we're super focused on the Challenge Series right now. So while we do manage social media across 365 days of the year for Breeders' Cup, it's very concentrated this time of year on focusing on the Challenge Series. One of the things that is so great about social media and the way that it will work really well is when people can build a connection to these horses, their stories, their names, how they look. Really, they want access to them as early and often as possible. So the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series offers an opportunity to introduce these names and stories to people well in advance of the Breeders' Cup, so that when you get to the Breeders' Cup in November, people are like, oh, I remember that horse, or whether they're a casual fan that's like, oh, that's the horse that likes to listen to rap music, or Mind Your Biscuits, or they're a more core fan and they remember the specific races and graded stakes that were won. That's a way to really help the stats down the line. So the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series, what we do is we obviously put out the previews and the recaps and all the paperwork, as I call it, that needs to go out on social media. But then we really try to focus on wandering around the backside in the morning before the race, the day before, and just trying to find stories and people who are out there and just showing the horse in its natural habitat, whether he or she is getting a bath or hanging out in the stall, we try to just show the people the horses and introduce them to who they are and try to tell some stories. So we do a lot of live streaming and yeah, mostly behind the scenes stuff.
And that brings to mind a question. You're shooting things out on Twitter. I know Twitter favorite, the Eric Yo horse, Southern Phantom with the crazy white face. Tim Wilkins, the Times Union reporter, said he tweeted out a picture and had incredible amount of likes. As you go around during the year and send out tweets and whatnot, are there certain tweets, certain content that tends to get more likes than other content?
Definitely. It's either unique things like the horse, the Southern Phantom horse with the gorgeous, unique-looking face, or it's old-time favorites. It's the Zenyatta posts. It's the American Pharoah posts. And again, it kind of ties back to what I was saying before, where that name recognition helps because people see that, they catch that in their feeds, and they're like, oh, I know that horse. I want to look at that post. I want to share that post. So the more people are aware of the names and the stories, the more they're likely to share. And the Southern Phantom horse, those types of horses are great for the sport and the business because, when you think about the entire ecosystem of people who might be interested in racing, a lot of it starts with horse people.
Oh, sure.
And horse people love that stuff. So it's like if you can just start showing them cool horse stuff and then slowly bring them along and be like, here's a little more and here's a little, but you can't go direct to like the morning line, because they're just like, I don't understand that language. So yeah, those horses are great for the business, I think.
And just before we let you go, give us your gig up here at Saratoga. What is your day like? And beyond Saratoga, how do you travel around and do your job, the horse racing calendar throughout the year?
Yeah, so Grand Slam is completely virtual. So our team is spread out across different states. So I actually am based in Boston. So I do a lot of the East Coast travel. I'll be at Belmont, here in Saratoga. Then we have a couple of people in the Lexington area, so they can focus on Keeneland and Churchill. And then we have a West Coast team who does Santa Anita and Del Mar, and then some people in kind of the middle of the country. So we use a lot of video chatting, lots of different cloud-based platforms to communicate. So it's more about managing from like the hive, from the home base, what's going on at any given time of year, and then assigning who's going to be the boots on the ground. But it's a really collaborative process with the team because it does take a lot of minds to really put together a good strategy and approach for the day. So for example, today, Arlington Million, the show's tomorrow. It's on NBC from 6 to 7:30, or excuse me, NBCSN, 6 to 7:30. And I have 2 GSS team members there. So they did all the backside stuff this morning. While I'm here, I'm working another event here tonight locally in Saratoga. But again, we all collaborated on the plan. So it's a divide and conquer mindset here at Grand Slam Social.
Very good. And it is Grand Slam Social. Shona Rosenblum doing some work for the Breeders' Cup through her company. And obviously, again, social media has become such a big part of just life in general, but the horse racing game over the past decade or so. So it's good to know the Breeders' Cup engaged and maybe pulling in some new fans that way. We wish you a lot of good luck going forward. Thanks for the visit.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Shona Rosenblum, again, Grand Slam Social is the name of the company, and they're doing the work for the Breeders' Cup on the social media side of things. We'll take a break. When we come back, Jeremiah Engelhardt is in the house. We'll talk some racing right after this with Jeremiah. Stay tuned.
Bet and cheer on live racing from Woodbine and Mohawk Park. thoroughbred and harness action. The wagers are just the beginning. Watch award-winning broadcasts covering both breeds, incredible battles contested over the most unique grass course in North America. Experience the full fields with over 130 thoroughbred and 160 live harness days. Get access to free handicapping material and join the ranks of Woodbine and Mohawk Park players from all over the globe. For more information, visit woodbine.com.
Come on.
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Whoops. My bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
The backstretch workers are the heart and soul of what we do.
They're the backbone of the industry.
People on the racetrack are very giving people.
It's a very oppressive community of people helping one another. We see it all the time.
Any help we need it. It's right there in their hands.
It makes so much easier in the family to have somebody like Nathan to help them.
A day at the track isn't complete without a night at the Horseshoe. Great food, hot music, and cold drinks. So why go downtown when all the action's just across from the track? The Horseshoe Inn at the corner of Nelson and Gridley.
Welcome back. Always happy to be joined by our friend Jeremiah Engelhardt, New York-based trainer, started out the Finger Lakes, and now a big splash on the NYRA circuit as well, and horses continue to be at all of those venues. Good morning.
Good morning, Seth. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on board. And let's go back a week to the basketball game. I said to you after the game, I only got in for like 40 seconds. I think people think, the old guy. I play like 4 times a week in the wintertime. And I said, you got to have somebody like me in for fundamentals, just feed you underneath.
I tell you, I was reading on Twitter after the game. I think your agent was saying you're requesting a trade next year or something like that. Maybe a little contract holdout at the beginning of spring training.
Yeah, but you're down there as the Spacey of the Charles Barkley underneath, and finally at the end of the game, you hit a nice 3-pointer too.
Yeah, we had a couple threes. It takes, whenever I play, it takes me a little while to get into the game a little bit. Karen, I think we were undefeated with Karen as the sole bench coach, and when Todd came on, I don't know if we've won a game. So there's some talks about him maybe being on the outs too. So we'll see.
Yeah, it was, and again for a great cause. The chaplaincy was a lot of fun,
Yes,
and it's always amazing to see the jockey clearly. The first set early in the game, I think it was Irad. It was either Irad or Jose Ortiz came down the court and did the behind and nailed the pass. It was like, man, that's. Clearly
they're not supposed to practice before this game.
Clearly.
There's been some footage of them and some, sneaky cell phone footage of them practicing for months before. So
the behind the back pass that I say hit on a dime at the other breaking. It was, but again, a lot of fun for the chaplaincy. So really had a good time.
It's a great cause. It really is.
Yeah, it's always fun to do. All right, let's talk a little racing, and we want to go back a few days. To the Troy. We're going to watch the stretch run of the Troy. It'll be number 7, Sandy Slew, winning by 3/4 of a length. This was a nice effort from Sandy Slew. You guys claimed this horse at this meet last year and have had a good run with Sandy Slew, but then the report was a little ding, didn't make it back to the winner's circle. Yeah. But I wanted to give you a chance to update everybody on Sandy Slew.
Sandy's doing well. We're going to retire him. Okay. I think it was a suspensory issue, and actually Jose said he felt like he did it at the 3/8 pole, and he said the rest of the race was all hard. He got late, really late, which I thought something was wrong. When I saw that horse close on him real late to the wire, and then when I was watching him gallop out, it looked like there might have been an issue. And Jose, he said he wasn't horrible, but he felt something was wrong. So he did the right thing, and we gave him a ride home. He didn't need the Kimsey brace or anything to put him on, but I think Jose's talking like it might be the first horse at his farm down in Ocala that he just bought.
Yeah,
so.
very good.
Or his
So-
hayfield.
Yeah, good to know. As I say, you guys had a nice run with him since the claim, and it's good to know things turned out, and he'll get a nice retirement now.
Yeah.
A couple of horses that were winners for you earlier in the meet, and we wanted updates on just to know what's maybe going forward for these. Back on August 1st, we're going to watch the number 9 Jaded Lady. This is a little maiden special for state breds here. She was coming off a start last time at the Finger Lakes. That was the career debut. Ran a good second up there, but Jaded Lady comes back and wins again on August 1st at Saratoga. First, what was the confidence builder that allowed you to say, all right, let's go from the Finger Lakes and give her a try up here at Saratoga, and what's next for her?
Well, I thought that she would be a little bit better on the turf. You know, Shanghai Bobby seemed to be moving up, you know, a little bit on the grass. Of course, they ran well on the dirt too, but she did enough in her first start where I thought if the turf was going to move her up, she would benefit from getting on the grass. So the plan was to give her that first race at Finger Lakes, and if she ran well enough to show that she could, you know, compete at NYRA, then we'd give her the shot, and she did. Louis said he thought she was going to win for fun at the top of the stretch, but she kind of waited on her rivals and then kind of took off again when they approached her. So she was very professional.
That's a nice gutsy performance.
Yeah,
where for a minute you think, oh, maybe she's going to get past, but no, she won't let him go by.
Yeah, Louis he told me I'm confidently riding her and thinking she's just going to spurt clear, and she didn't do that. Once she got to the front, she waited, and you know, whenever you got a Chad Brown one at your doorstep, you don't want to try to open that door up. You try to hold it closed as much as you can, but she was able to keep going and finish strong.
Also wanted to take a look at another one. Speaking of hayfields, I wanted to show Hayfield and the win from the other day. This was on a follow-up off a win down at Belmont. That was a win over Rick Violet's nice horse, Byself, but then comes up here to Saratoga and gets it done. Hayfield, the number 3 horse, again, back on the beginning of the meets, July 20th. What's up next for Hayfield?
Hayfield, we're going to wait for this third book. We ran her back on short rest here in this race. The plan was, you know, Jimmy Riccio is very sharp in his claims and spotting his horses and kind of getting an overall read on them and with the numbers. And this filly, we'll look here for the third book and try to find a race that's gonna fit her timing wise from what she's done so far. He wanted to run her back on short rest, and then as we got close to the race, he didn't. And I didn't want to run her back on short rest at first, and then I changed my mind and wanted to run her as we got closer to the race. So
looked good though.
It was a good team effort.
Everybody's working together.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little future now, because certainly you have one coming up on the weekend worth paying attention to in the Adirondack on Saturday. A grade 2 for the 2-year-old fillies. We're going to watch the stretch run of the Maiden Breaker down at Belmont for Sue's Fortune. Pretty good looking effort with, as compared to this field, a nice 68 buyer. Sue's Fortune is going to be the number 1 horse. Wins off by a chart margin of 8.5. This is a nice little New York bred, but as always in these 2-year-old stakes races at this time of year, you're looking at a bunch of horses with 1 win under their belt and looking pretty good all around. But what are your feelings for Sue's Fortune on Saturday in the Adirondack?
You know, she seems like she's training just as good as she was going into that first race. I really wasn't expecting her to run as well as she did in that first race. I think she's a very competitive filly. She likes to run. And a lot of times when you have 2-year-olds that are like that and they want to race, they show early. I kind of was thinking the same path what Todd did last year with, I think it was Pure Prize, the New York bred filly. He won the Adirondack with her. It seems like the Adirondack might come up a little bit softer than the Spinaway at the end of the meet and the Schuylerville at the beginning of the meet. So that was my angle to try to maybe utilize this spot at this time for her. So we'll see how she does tomorrow.
And I think it works out exactly that way. I mean, the Asmussen filly, Lyrical Lady, certainly looked good early in the meet up here, and that's probably the horse to beat. But I think otherwise, it's wide open.
I think ideally you want to try to catch one of those horses that ran early in the meet, might have ran a real big race. They might regress a little bit with some of the quick turnaround, and hopefully that we have just enough time where we give her our A performance.
Yeah, and again, a New York bred on a week or 10 days that is proving out to be very fruitful for the New York bred, so maybe you can continue that trend.
Yeah.
Also want to take a look at the 7th race on Saturday. 7th race is an allowance non-winners of one other than 5.5 on the grass. Going to go back to Belmont on July 11th and look at Majestic 1 for Bill Parcells and August Dawn Farm. Nice win in the second career start, but it was also notable it was the first start on the turf, so clearly she appreciated the turf, and we'll keep our fingers crossed the weather holds up and whatnot. But tomorrow's 7th race, 3rd start for Majestic 1. What are the thoughts?
She's a pretty talented filly. We thought maybe we'd give her a shot in the Coronation Cup, but for me, off of this first performance, it was just a little too quick back, and I wanted to give her some time to kind of recoup from that race. Weight-wise, health, I mean, she's really doing really well coming into this race. I'm excited for her race, and hopefully she gives the performance like I think she can.
So you were thinking stakes race, but you opted for the non-winners of one other.
Yeah, I just thought, it was the Coronation Cup's a 3-year-old filly race. Sometimes you got to take advantage of those when you still have that condition, but we gave her the little extra time and run her back on the, I think it was about 2 weeks from the Coronation Cup, so we gave her those extra 2 weeks to kind of come into this race.
All right, I want to touch on a couple from today. In the third race, we talked about on the handicapping show earlier. Nice salty little optional claim when you have Luz Mimi in there. I was on the muddy track last time, but boy, the race 2 back kind of attracted my attention in this afternoon's third. What do you think of Luz Mimi?
Luz Mimi, she's one of my favorite horses. She's a little filly. She tries all the time. Her race in Florida was one of my favorite races. Then she followed that up with that effort at Belmont.
Yeah.
When Jose's on her, and trust me, she tries for everybody, but Jose and her just kind of have a little bit of a thing. He knows, I don't even have to say anything to him. He knows her so well, and I usually don't say anything to him anyway, but I'm looking forward to running her today. I'm kind of excited for her race.
As I say, it's a salty little race, but she certainly looks competitive. And then we were joking, I said I had to ask you in the 10th race about Floyd Unger, because being a huge Odd Couple fan, I love the name, and I'm just wondering, is there a story behind it? It's Felix's brother from Buffalo.
Yes, that's just another one of the great naming jobs of Al Gold, Gold Square Ellis, his stable. He's, I think he's the best out there as far as naming horses. Put the Glass Down, Floyd Unger, Crawdaddy, Fixed Income Larry. Like he has a whole list of them, and I look forward to the next one he decides to run or name too.
Yeah, as an Odd Couple fan, I love the name.
Yeah.
And it worked 10.1 before the sale in March, so I'm assuming comes out and you're going to give the first start on the grass at 5.5. But what are your thoughts today?
I wasn't sure if he would be turf early on or eventually be turf. My rider, my assistants, they thought that he'd kind of be grass. We galloped him over the turf, and I thought he moved pretty well over the grass. I told Al, when he bought the horse, I did the research on the pedigree, and there was 3 foals. They were all unraced, and then you had this horse. So why do you want to buy him? We've had 3 foals. So I told him, if this horse breaks out of the gate today, I'm going to sit with him, watch the race, give him a high five, and say we won right out of the gate because we made it to the races. 3 other foals out of this mare have not made it to the races, but this one, once he breaks out of the gate, I'm giving him a high five.
All the Odd Couple fans are on board this. I love that. I remember the Floyd Unger episodes. You talked about working on the grass. There's not a grass workout showing, but you had to gallop over the grass.
Sometimes I tend not to work them over the grass. I'll just gallop them over the grass. I've had a couple instances where horses bled or, just didn't come out of the grass work well, so I kind of got away from working on the grass. And that's not to say that's right or wrong way to do it, but as long as I get them over it somehow, I feel like I'm confident in that.
That kind of leads me into a nuts and bolts question I've asked all the trainers who have sat there this year. Oklahoma versus main track. How do you make the decision where to work in the morning? Because most trainers have some that work on the main track and some others that work over at Oklahoma. Some of them say with a 2-year-old, I want at least one work on the main track just to get some experience there. What's your decision-making process going main track for workouts or Oklahoma?
Usually it's whatever track is at its best. I love to work right after a renovation break, whether, I'll work at Oklahoma. But, yeah, the 2-year-olds, the younger horses, I always like to get them over the track that they're going to run on a couple times. Even the older horses sometimes will benefit from a work on the the main track here, and sometimes they'll work a little bit lighter on the Oklahoma track because they know, hey, listen, we're going out, we're not racing, it's, you know. So everyone has their little quirks on what they like to do. I just like to get them on a good track.
Do you ever bring the horses out here to Clare Court?
I haven't. I think a couple years ago I had a filly that I used to bring out here because she was a little nutty on but when I was working for Mike Hushin, and when his barn was up here, he would tell me how great it was, and every now and then I'll have a horse or two that I'll bring up here.
Yeah, it's interesting to get the perspective on why that, as opposed to, and a lot of people say, yeah, you just have horses that maybe are a little quirky and they can get relaxed over here because it's a different kind of scenario. I have to ask that because I think yesterday or the day before, somebody came up to me and pointed at your name in the program and said, I don't know how they're all related. So give us the family relationship.
I hope everyone that asks this question to me is watching this show right now, so I can finally all right. So Chris Englehart, that's my father. All right, and Jeff Englehart is my brother. He's my second youngest brother, and my youngest brother Justin is an agent at Finger Lakes, so he's in the game. But if you see him on the program, Chris is my dad. I'm Jeremiah, and Jeff Englehart is my younger brother.
Yeah, I knew how that. I explained it to him. But
it really is. Like, I still have to this day, I have people that call me Chris. My dad says, my dad will tell me, oh, I got people come up to me like, hey, you're Jeremiah's father. I'm like, yeah, that's me. So
we had you on the show a couple of years ago, and you were having a great season, and you said something like your dad said, yeah, well, and then he put his record out there.
Yeah,
he said, when you get there.
I told him, I said to him after I won my first graded stake, I said, hey, Dad, have you ever won a graded race? And I think at that time he had like 3,300 wins. He goes, well, have you ever won 3,000 races? And I'm like, I got the point. I got it. Now he's win well over 4,000.
I like that. And certainly, during the afternoon, we're down in the studio the rest of the year looking at the Finger Lakes and a lot of the Englehart names there as well. Still, as I looked up the Equibase stats yesterday, you've had some winners out there just in the past few days.
Yeah.
Where do you have horses right now? Is it Finger Lakes here, and you have some downstate?
Yeah, we have about, I think, 75 at Finger Lakes. We keep 30 here at Saratoga, and then I think we have 60 at Belmont. So, my Uncle Steve and Tammy Lord and Dana Saul, they run my operation at Finger Lakes. Axel and Jelamway and her husband Will run my operation at Belmont, and Marianne Jensen and Sarah Stoltz run my operation here. So together they all make it very easy for me to get from, during Saratoga I'm here mostly. I've gone back over to Finger Lakes. I haven't gone down to Belmont. Yeah, well, one day to Belmont, and then so I don't have to do as much traveling right now during the meet. After the meet, I'll do a lot more traveling between the tracks.
Yeah, and I tell people all the time, and that kind of demonstrates it when you talk about the staff in the three places. People think of trainers, hey, you go out and you train the horses, and I don't think they realize you're a small business owner.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a whole staff of employees and payroll. And
I probably left out the most important person in my wife because I have 5 kids at home, and how she lets me juggle everything. I mean, I think it was Coach Parcells that told me she's got a special place in heaven for her. So she's really the backbone of everything because I'm free to go kind of whenever, and she handles all the kids just
five relatively little kids though.
Yeah, my oldest Raylan is 7. My twins CJ and Anna are 6. Eli's 5, and Jax is 3.
Bless you. Very good. And God bless your wife as well.
Yeah.
Glad you did get a chance to mention
her. Yeah.
But again, great meet up here at Saratoga. Certainly, as we're still fairly early or just approaching the halfway point, again with the stakes win the other day. Nice entrant in the Adirondack coming up on Saturday as well. And as I say, the other couple of winners that we've looked at also, among others. But we certainly wish you good luck going forward. Congratulations on what you've done so far, but always appreciate the visit.
Thanks a lot, Seth, for having me. I appreciate it.
Jeremiah Englehart, a little bit earlier, Shona Rosenblum, the social media player for the Breeders' Cup, and of course Alex Waldrop, president of the NTRA, all on this Friday edition of Racing Across America. Boy, it's a beautiful day. Come on up and take advantage of it. Some great racing, and obviously a nice stakes card tomorrow up here as well. But as I say, weather looks like it's going to be great on this Friday afternoon. Back in tomorrow at 9 o'clock with the Handicappers Report, 10 o'clock with Saratoga's at the Spa with Brian Nadeau. This afternoon, of course, Mike Callahan in with the bankroll, so stay tuned all afternoon for those cut-ins. Cash some tickets along with Mike, and tune back in tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for the Handicappers Report.
You've been watching Racing Across America with Seth Merrow. Racing Across America has been brought to you by CapitalOTBBet.com, the premier online wagering site in New York State. CapitalOTBBet.com. Sign up today. Hanel's Restaurant, a Saratoga tradition since 1922. 284 Jefferson Street, Saratoga, just minutes from the track. Thoroughfan, giving the fan a voice. Find them at thoroughfan.com. Woodbine Racetrack. Pick, bet, and cheer on world-class horse racing north of the border. And the new Capital OTB mobile app. Wager anytime, anywhere. Download it free from the iTunes Store or Google Play.